All right. In order to respect everyone's time, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'd like to thank everyone for logging in today for this Community Financial Empowerment Certification Level 2 class on reentry and recovery. Today's facilitator is going to be Ce Garrison with the Office of Financial Empowerment. So at this time, I see Ce is already starting to share her presentation. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Ce and let her take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. All right, well, welcome everyone. So this course is going to cover working with returning students and also individuals experiencing substance use disorder who are either in early recovery or potentially contemplating recovery, and how that will affect the way that you work with them and their financial lives. So to go ahead and start us off, I'm going to put this in the chat too, just so everyone has it. Would like to do an icebreaker. So if everybody could go around, say your name, what agency you're coming from, and what you do there. And then one thing that you're excited about, either personally or professionally, or, you know, my favorite season of all time is getting ready to come up, so I'm pretty pumped about that. And then if you could rate your familiarity with working with either returning citizens or folks with substance use disorder from 1 to 5, 1 being no knowledge at all, and 5 being that that's basically what you do all the time. And then once we go through everybody, we'll move on. So I'll start. My name is Ce Garrison. I work for the Office of Financial Empowerment with the Office of Resilience and Community Services with Louisville Metro Government. And I supervise all of our direct service financial empowerment programs, as well as the upcoming Financial Empowerment Center and the Economic Mobility Lab. And my familiarity with working with both of these populations is a 4. I feel like there's always new things to learn, so I'm saying 4. All right, who wants to go next?
I'm Amy Smith, and I am with the Department of Resilience and Community Services, but I am in the foster grandparent program where I'm working with senior volunteers that are tutoring children in the schools. And I really don't have any familiarity with, I guess it would be a 1.
Okay, thanks, Amy. Welcome.
I could go next. My name is Emily. I am with the Child Advocacy Center here in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm a family advocate and MDT coordinator. I am excited to learn more about recovery and reentry for sure. I do have quite a bit of knowledge because I used to work in a prison years ago. So.
Okay, great. Welcome.
My name is Julia Dake. I am with the Homeless Services Division in the Office of Resilience and Community Service, and I'm the Communications Coordinator. I would say my familiarity is about a 1, but I'm excited to learn because many of the individuals experiencing homelessness in Louisville do have substance use disorder and are, part of reentry programs. So it'll be interesting to learn how to better assist people.
Great. Welcome, Julia.
I'm Angie Hare. I'm with Shively Area Ministries. I'm the operations manager here, and I oversee all the direct service programs that we do. I am most interested in this subject because we deal with a lot of family members that are dealing with people that are struggling from substance abuse. And we're starting a kinship program here, and we think this will be good information for us to have, even though we don't deal with that person directly. We think we do indirectly. I would say my knowledge about it is about a 2. And what I'm most excited about right now is fall is around the corner. And I love getting out sweaters and scarves, and I'm excited about that.
Yes, thank you, Angie.
My name is Mandela Gapala. I work with Kentucky Refugee Ministries. I am a job developer. I assist our refugee and immigrant clients to find jobs. Excited to learn about our topic today. And my familiarity working with returning citizens, I would say is about 3. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. Welcome.
Hi, this is
Hi.
Jennifer Massey. I'm with RCS at Louisville Metro. I'm in the NP Cares program. Basically, we are providing financial assistance and case management to people who have been financially impacted by the COVID pandemic. And let's see. I don't know. I mean, I'm ready for it to be cooler, but I don't want to have to stop getting in the pool. I would say that I'm somewhere around a 3.
Great, thank you.
My name is Trisha Gassaway, and I'm also with RCS with the NP Cares program with Jennifer Massey. My knowledge for recovery and reentry is probably say between a 3 and 5. I've worked in home incarceration in the past and also at the jail. And I would say I can't wait for it to get cold because I like cold weather. I don't like summertime.
Absolutely. Welcome.
My name is Patrice Elam. I'm with Louisville Metro RCS. I am a case manager with the ESG Rapid Rehousing Program. New to working with, primarily work with homeless families. And so I'm really new to working with people who are returning, with the returning citizens reentry and people suffering with substance abuse disorders. So my knowledge is like 1, 2. I'm learning more each day. I am looking forward to, I don't know, the weekend and getting back to this beach.
Ooh, yes. Always for the weekend. Welcome. Anyone else?
My name is Laura.
Go
ahead.
Go ahead.
My name is Laura Winfrey. I'm with RCS Housing and Support. I'm the supervisor of case management. I am probably somewhere between a 3 and a 4 on recovery and reentry. I've worked with recovery quite a bit, but not as much with the reentry population. So, yeah. And then I'm not looking forward to the winter, but I am looking forward to some more cooler days that we got coming as the weather kind of topples out of the 90s. So I'm looking for the cooler, nice days.
Yes, thank you, Laura.
My name is Elijah McClanahan, and I'm with the Child Advocacy Center. I'm a family advocate, but I'm just in training still. So I am looking forward also to autumn and the cool air and the change of colors in the trees.
Great, thank you. Ooh, so many people in here that are excited for fall, just like me. So excited. Ooh, my mood gets like 100 times better when it gets cooler outside. All right, so I will be doing my very best to monitor the chat. Thank goodness Joey is here to also help with that, because sometimes I don't know what happens. I get a little lost. But welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for your participation so far. Just a little first shout out. Welcome to our Community Financial Empowerment Certification team. If you have never taken a course before, welcome, welcome, welcome. If you have taken a course before, welcome back. If you've done our level 1 certification and you're already through that, we're so happy to have you among our vast network of folks. And then you need 3 of these courses like the one that we're doing today in order to become level 2 certified, which is also, if you want to take more than those 3 classes, we would love to have you. But we also just love being able to spread the love and the knowledge of the financial empowerment space to continue to work with best practices with all the folks that we're serving. So thank you to everyone for your willingness to participate today. I have 3 sort of guidelines that I use whenever I'm giving trainings. The first one is just be kind to folks. You know, we're all here learning, trying to gain some knowledge. And so there are times when maybe people might not say things the best way or might struggle to say things. And so just share kindness while you're here, be here, hang out, you know. If you have real questions about people that you're working with specifically, of course, you know, don't share any sort of identifying information, but definitely if you have a scenario that you want to share to ask questions about, feel free to do that. Stop me at any time to ask questions, put them in the chat. I'm here. And then finally, just be present. So if you need to step away because you have to go take a phone call or get some water, or I am particularly needing of some hot bean juice a lot of the time. So if you need that, do that too. But just make sure that while we're here, you're muted, and that, you know, if you have anything to sort of contribute, please. I love participation. Otherwise, it's just me talking the whole time. So a little bit about me. My name is Ce Garrison, which I already said, and I work for the Office of Financial Empowerment. All my contact information is here. You'll get this presentation after it's over. So if you ever have questions or you need anything from me, don't hesitate to reach out. My favorite things, I have 5 now, soon to be 6 nephews. That is so many nephews, but I love them all. My oldest nephew, Ray, is this adorable little prince up here in the top left, and I love him dearly. That is his brand new baby brother on the top right, who I also love dearly. I have 4 dogs, which is so many dogs, and my 2 favorite people in the whole world are my grandparents, so I also put them on here. I'm sure they love that I just shared their photo over there, but they'll be okay. Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? We are going to cover what kinds of special considerations you should have when you're working on the financial empowerment or financial management piece with the folks that you're serving who are either in recovery or returning citizens. We're also going to talk about the importance of targeted financial education rather than broader financial education for everyone. Options for individuals who might need some help, and just some tips and tools that will be helpful for that. We'll cover a little bit about employment and skills. Then we'll talk about how brain science changes the way that we have to set goals with folks. Finally, doing some coaching questions and assessment overview. And then if there's anything else that I haven't covered that you are interested in knowing about, I certainly will do my best to answer any questions. If I don't know, I will find the answer. That's my favorite thing. All right, so to kick us off, what we say to our folks that we're working with is very important, but how we say it is crucial. That's the difference between maybe calling someone in and being able to hold space for them and work with them versus sort of shutting them off, shutting them down. And a lot of times, like, the way that we talk about these two populations specifically will increase their confidence on the work that they're doing. So when we're talking about folks that have been formerly incarcerated, we want to avoid using words like convict or inmate, criminal, anything like that. Instead, you can say incarcerated person, formerly incarcerated person, returning citizen. We don't want to use words like, you know, ex-offender or anything like that. And also, you know, one of the language dynamics that we're shifting away from is the use of criminal justice system, because we know, particularly related to some drug-related offenses, that folks are disproportionately targeted for various different identities, race, gender, socioeconomic status, the town that they live in, et cetera. And so as much as possible, using the phrase punishment system can often help to make folks feel more comfortable that you understand and recognize that, like, the stuff that they've gone through is very hard. And we're no longer in the mode of punishment when we're working with our returning citizens or formerly incarcerated folks. We're really working from a place of moving forward and helping people get a different start. And so then also when talking about recovery, just to kind of walk through the top part of this grid a little bit, when we talk about mutual aid meetings, we're talking about things like AA, NA, adult children, all of the 12 steps, smart recovery, any of those sorts of meetings where people are convening with other folks that have a similar lived experience. And so if there's a green check mark, then those are words that might be appropriate in that setting. If they are red check mark or red stop signs, then those are words that we should not use. So, for example, you might hear someone self-identify as an addict or an alcoholic or a substance abuser. That word is kind of just out most of the time, but you might hear folks self-identify that way. But when we are talking with our clients, you know, we really want to focus away from words like that and use person-first language, such as a person with a substance use disorder rather than substance abuse, or a person obtaining medication-assisted recovery, somebody who has an opioid use disorder. Long-term recovery, that is a term that's kind of like, it depends on who you ask, but a lot of times people with more than 5 years, or sometimes that double-digit number, more than 10 years, will identify as a person in long-term recovery. And so, yeah, just when we're working with folks, just really trying to use language that's very conscious of their experiences, but the fact that they're a person first, and that is, unless they ask us to use different terminology, in which case we should always defer to the folks that we're working with, because they're experts in their own situations. So SAMHSA has this working definition of recovery, and there's 10 guiding principles to that. Those 10 guiding principles are that we're going to use hope in order to help people move forward. It's going to be person-driven. There's lots of different ways to do it. We're going to wrap ourselves around the folks that we're serving as much as possible. We're going to find resources for them if we don't have those resources ourselves. We're going to do the work together. We're going to build relationships. We're going to honor their culture, the culture of their experiences. We're going to focus on strengths and really who is responsible for what in the work that we're doing. And then where possible, providing peer support or opportunities to address past traumas or past experiences that folks may be having. When we talk about financial empowerment specifically, one thing that sometimes doesn't always come to the forefront of our minds, but is very important, is that money and relationships to money is very emotional. And so we are going to be in a place where we're recognizing that sometimes we're like, why are you spending your money like that? Why is that important to you? But a lot of that is very emotionally related. And so we want to be able to offer folks choice. We want to be able to support their choices, but we also want to be realistic about the fact that too many choices could be very overwhelming, and we can't offer choices in a way that doesn't honor what the person truly wants. So, all of that. So there are 8 dimensions of wellness when we talk about like folks. I'm going to close this chat for a moment. Okay. Got to get all that stuff off my screen so I can see. So there are 8 dimensions of wellness that we talk about when we talk about people reaching their highest level of well-being. And so that's that their environment is well, their financial lives are well, they are employed, or if they're not employed, they're doing activities in their community that sort of support them, like being a part of a community, which leads to that social piece. They're getting some physical and emotional wellness. They're nurturing their bodies and brains and their spiritual wellness, and all of these dimensions are interwoven. They all have the same degree of importance. So my question to all of you is, which one of these, and there may be multiple, but which dimensions of wellness that are up here on the screen do you think that someone who has been incarcerated has had to suppress? And feel free to unmute or put it in the chat, either way. Okay, Julia said all of them to some extent. Okay, Angie said environmental. Absolutely. So thinking about folks who have, Trisha agrees with Julia, thanks Trisha. Thinking about folks who have a substance use disorder who have been struggling to maybe get to the place that they're at due to their substance use. What dimensions of wellness do you think they've had to suppress in that experience? Physical, absolutely. Emotional, definitely. Spiritual, for sure, yes. So if someone is a returning citizen or formerly incarcerated person, or there's someone that is entering recovery after active substance use disorder, how does someone prioritize which dimension of wellness that they should start with? right? Because we just talked about, you know, choices are important, but way too many choices is really hard, right? And so you have these 8 dimensions of wellness. How does someone choose which one should be the priority?
I think it depends on where they're at in their life at the moment, because I think if someone starts out in emotional, then the next person isn't going to be able to do it in the same aspect. They would probably want to start somewhere else in their life, because drug abuse takes a toll on everyone, and it's not just taking a toll on them, but it's also taking a toll on their family and friends.
Yes. Yeah, so you're touching on a lot of things there, Trisha, and it looks like Angie said a similar thing in the chat, is that, you know, all of these things are the same degree of importance, but they're going to depend person to person based on their experience, based on the dimensions of wellness and the dimensions of their life that they have not been able to address in a while, is going to really, it's going to make a couple of challenges. One, figuring out even where to start. And two, you know, a lot of these things are going to be taking precedence at the same time, and that can be very overwhelming. And it can be scary for a lot of folks to even think about the possibility of shouldering any of this work towards wellness, especially if it's something that they haven't been working towards in a long time or had the opportunity to work towards as well. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the brain. So if you look at this, I love this hand model of the brain because I think that this is like, you know, a really cool way to understand the brain. Yes, depends on what triggers them. Absolutely. So if you hold your hand up, making the number 4, and you tuck your thumb right into your fingers, this is your brain doing what brains do. I will say that a lot. So the thumb is sort of the hippocampus and the amygdala. This is really controlling a lot of our like emotion, impulse, all of that. And then at the top, you have the prefrontal cortex. And then if you close your hand into a fist, you have your cerebral cortex, is the knuckles, and the brainstem down at the bottom, which connects to the spinal cord. And you know, the spinal cord just goes everywhere. So when we talk about folks that are experiencing trauma or stress or any sort of like insecure attachment, basically the cerebral cortex, you know, that is all your like high functioning stuff that's happening. But when we have somebody that is, got a little ahead of myself. When we talk about with the closed fist and the knuckles, we're talking about the top brain, and we like to describe that as the wise owl. So that is like all of our reasoning, our working memory, our self-regulation skills, all of that stuff lives in the top of the brain. And the bottom brain, in the limbic region, the brainstem, all of that is the basic functioning, or the guard dog. And so basically what the bottom brain is trying to do is just keep someone alive, keep them breathing, keep them safe. Like that's everything that it's doing. And so when we have any of these factors at play, trauma, stress, lack of attachment, experiences that can be very hard on the body, such as substance use disorder or incarceration, it causes the brain to kind of flip the lid. And so the only part of the brain that's really able to connect well is that part that's trying to keep people safe. And so when that happens, we're not talking about folks that are really able to fully engage the parts of their brain that would help them to do like extended thinking. And this is super normal. It doesn't, and I think that sometimes we have to remind folks that we work with that this is a normal experience to have. Your brain is designed to keep you safe, and it's going to do that at all costs, at the expense of everything else. And so sometimes, especially when working with money, we have folks that will say, I don't know why I did that. I don't know why I made the choice that I made. And a lot of times it's just because they went into like, you know, autopilot and their brain was just trying to keep them safe. And sometimes that looks like avoidance. Sometimes that looks like hyper engagement. It just depends on the person. But keep that in mind. So I want to check in really fast. This is my adorable dog, Bailey. Are there any questions so far about anything that we've talked about? Does anybody want to revisit anything? Are there any reflections or comments that folks have? Yeah, so Joey asked a good question. How much can the guard dog survival takeover be influenced by addiction and the influence of drugs? That's a great question. So essentially, substance use can often mute the body's ability to like go into that guard dog mode. And so instead of having like a hyper safety mode, sometimes when folks are actively engaged in substance use, they don't have the ability to do that at all. So when they enter into a period of non-use, or if they decide to enter recovery, sometimes that guard dog becomes like way more activated or way more aware because people are confronting stimuli that they haven't had to confront before. And so I would say, you know, when you're working with folks, especially when you're working with folks who are in early recovery or folks that are very early out of an incarceration setting, they are going to likely have a lot more emotional regulation issue just because they're sort of having this new awakening of the guard dog in their brain. That's a great question. Thanks, Joey. Anyone else have questions before we move on? Okay. Well, also, again, please feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat if you do at any time. Okay, so when we talk about financial education, there's sort of three domains. Really, there's four, but we're going to cover these three. The first one is credit health. So when you're working with folks who are exiting the punishment system or folks that are newly in recovery, a lot of times, in my experience, and I used to be a CADC or clinical alcohol and drug counselor, and I used to work with a lot of folks that were newly in recovery. And it would be like, okay, so what's your credit look like? And they'd be like, I don't know, like I haven't looked at my credit since I was 18, you know, and so
Hey, C, we just lost sound.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know what happened. All right.
Gremlins.
I know, right? So a lot of times when we're talking about credit with folks, this is the first time that they've addressed their credit in a long time. And sometimes that stuff can get real hairy real fast. So
annualcreditreport.com. This is an important website to remember because there are so many credit report websites out there, and I can't tell you how many times I have run into folks using the wrong website, and they end up like incurring, you know, a $25 fee because they didn't know that they weren't going to the correct website to get. They're entitled to those like free reports, which is odd because freecreditreport.com is not the one. You know, annualcreditreport.com. We offer a class in our division called Credit as an Asset, which it's sort of like a starter course for credit or a restart for credit if folks are interested in learning about credit health, learning about, you know, what is a credit report? How do I know, you know, if I have a negative mark on my credit, those sorts of things. I would also say, so there are so many opportunities in the community for community lending for folks. So a lot of times, you know, we know that folks that have a varied credit history or folks that have been previously involved with the punishment system may struggle to obtain credit. And so any sort of community development financial institution like El Home, Park Community Credit Union has a CDFI. LISC is another CDFI that's in Louisville, but folks are going to have an easier time accessing credit through one of those like nonprofit CDFIs than they would at a traditional financial institution. And then we also in this community have a Prison, which does a lot of work with credit health. And we are in the process of trying to bring a financial empowerment center to Louisville, which will also offer free financial counseling as an essential public service. And when that is fully operational in January of 2022, we will also be able to refer lots of folks to that to get some like good credit health opportunities. Another thing, I don't like to really say the B word around clients because I think sometimes it can scare them away a little bit, but budgeting and savings.
Hey, C.
Yes.
One last thing on credit to mention, especially with this population, is beware of the credit repair companies. Those people who advertise on street corners will fix your credit. And basically all they do is dispute everything on your credit report, hoping to get it thrown out. So you're paying them money for something that you can do yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Or in some cases, you're paying them money and then nothing happens. Yes, thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, so, and also with the credit health stuff, there is no like fix quick kind of solution. And I think, you know, people want that because there are lots of back debts and court fees and things that people might have that they want to access credit to address. But we have to be like really cautious and honest with them about the fact that credit takes time, which is not, you know, that's not everyone's like favorite thing to hear for sure, but it is what it is. With budgeting, I find that sometimes it's a little easier for folks to swallow if you call it a spending plan, but there is going to be the way that we sort of structure this with our financial coaches in our office is we start with a spending tracker. Just write down everything that you're spending money on, even things that are as small as like things that people don't think of, like maybe cigarettes, or if you go to Circle K and get a Polar Pop every day or whatever, like even those expenses are expenses that you should start tracking. And that will help to inform the spending plan later on, but it will also help because when you first do a spending plan, it will definitely not be correct. You know, that's part of the process. And so when we talk about that whole process, we want to be really honest and upfront with folks that, like, you know, this is going to take some time. We're going to have to keep coming back to this, revisiting it, adjusting it, and things are going to constantly change, especially for folks in these two populations. Two of the things that change the most often are going to be like employment, in terms of like who their employer is. They might be moving from job to job for a little while. And then housing, as people are sort of like reestablishing into some sort of permanent housing. There may be, you know, halfway houses or treatment programs or transitional living, and those sorts of things will all inform the budget. And so we also want to encourage folks to budget individually. Especially when they're like in one of these two populations. You know, they may be with a partner, they may be getting their children back, they may be doing lots and lots of different things with other people, but we want to encourage them to work on a budget individually first, and then work on budgeting as a family or with the folks that they're going to be in a household with. And then this access to financial mainstream piece is really important. So anytime any of you can go to bankonlouisville.org, that's Bank on Louisville, not Bank of Louisville. Bank on Louisville has all of the safe and affordable nationally certified accounts that are available in our community. We now have 7 of those accounts through 6 financial institutions. And those can kind of be like a starting point for folks that haven't had access to the financial mainstream in a while. There also is, of course, some concerns that folks have, maybe if they're in check systems for fraud, it's going to be a lot harder to obtain a bank account. But I'll talk a little bit about that later on. And then debt and court fees. So this wage garnishment 25, 60, 65 rule, we will cover this in a couple of slides, but I just wanted to put this here because some folks, when they are sort of restarting or they're at the starting point with their finances, this wage garnishment is unavoidable. If there's back child support, if there is restitution or court fees, like any of those things, it will not be possible for them to avoid wage garnishment. And that is a terrible reality, but it is the reality that we're in. So it's going to be hard for folks sometimes to create a list of debts that they have when they have been in these experiences. And so the credit report can kind of be a good starting point for that. But also, again, just like reiterating that this is going to have to be a revisiting process just over and over. And then, you know, as a last resort, legal aid has bankruptcy clinics. You can help folks access services through them in order, if that is something that they need to go through. Bankruptcy is absolutely the last option. And I don't know how many times I would have folks that I was working with say, I'm just going to file for bankruptcy. Like that is sort of their first thought, is like, again, it's sort of like the get rid of it quick kind of ideology, but we want to exhaust every other option in most cases before we move to bankruptcy. So what is the cost of substance use disorder and incarceration? Income of returning citizens is 41% lower on average. 41% lower than average for folks that have not been in the punishment system. Substance use disorder costs the United States $442 billion every single year. And the average court-ordered debt load that someone will exit the punishment system with is about $40,000. And so that court-ordered debt load, again, this is money that folks owe the government, and the government is going to get their money. I know that folks have a lot of concerns about that, which is totally valid, but the government will find a way to get their money. Debt can be converted to a civil judgment, and so if people are not paying back their money, it can affect their ability to, have probation, parole, release. All of those things can be affected by debt. And, there aren't a whole lot of community services out there that are able to pay or to help pay court fees and fines. And so this is something that a lot of people are just going to have to work on their spending plan and with somebody to sort of organize their debts in order to make sure that those are getting paid. And so the cost to the state of Kentucky and also to the country for folks who are incarcerated is just rising and rising and rising all of the time. There's not really sort of a plan to address that at this point, other than privatizing a lot of services for folks that are incarcerated, which just creates more debt for the individual. And so this is a very, very tricky sort of slippery slope that we're working with folks on. Okay, so in terms of credit health, I mentioned annualcreditreport.com. They are offering weekly credit checks through all 3 of the bureaus through 2022 because of COVID-19. So this is an awesome time for people to get a real good credit picture. I say they're offering weekly credit checks. It's also important to know that those will not affect the person's credit. And so with all the scams related to COVID-19, the bureaus are offering this service up as a way to kind of help folks ensure that they're not falling victim to identity theft. And so with those reports, you will get a list of all the debts, but there will not be a score associated with that. And I say that because I think sometimes then people want to go to services like Credit Karma, which nothing against Credit Karma, it just offers scores from only 2 of the bureaus and not the 3rd one. And so you can't get a complete credit picture from that. But a lot of financial institutions offer some sort of credit monitoring for a nominal fee. And so if that's something that someone is truly interested in, that is an option. So credit as an asset, I talked about before, is the curriculum that's offered through our office. It's offered monthly. It covers the basics of credit and credit building. And if any of you are working with people a lot who have credit questions, you can also be trained to facilitate that credit as an asset curriculum, either one-on-one or 4 classes through your agency. So if you are interested in that, Joey is the person to reach out to about that. And then I talked a little bit about Uprising. So Uprising is a nonprofit, low-fee financial services agency. They focus primarily on debt and credit. And we also have financial coaching through our office. And part of that financial coaching is to really help people build an emergency savings. So if you're working with folks that don't have any savings, which with these 2 populations is extraordinarily likely, or if they're just needing like a financial assessment, or they're just looking to get a clear picture, or you feel like, I got all this information from this great training that I had today, but I still don't know everything, and you want to send somebody to an expert, feel free to reach out to me. We can definitely get somebody linked up with a financial coach. And then community lending, like through folks like El Home, is an alternative to payday lending. And so I know that, for example, El Home has a loan product where they will loan someone, I I think it's $1,000, it's up to $1,000. It might be up to $500. But then the way that that small loan works is that if the person pays back 11 of the payments, then the 12th one, L Home will pay for them. And so instead of going to a payday lender where, you know, you might have 300% interest, those CDFIs can really offer some great alternatives. And then some credit building tips. First, second chance renters can report payments to credit bureaus. And so there are several rental agencies throughout Louisville that will do that. And it could be very beneficial to folks to be renting from those places just as a way to sort of help build their credit. It's also important to avoid additional credit right away, if at all possible, while trying to sort of like get a baseline financial health assessment, because that getting a ton of credit at once can be detrimental to a credit score. And the other thing that folks are going to need to be really aware of, especially if they are formerly incarcerated, is that all of the information on their credit report is accurate. And if it's not, then those errors need to be reported. There's an increasing rate of folks who family members or friends or partners are taking out credit in their name while they are incarcerated. And they're coming back to find that they owe, you know, $5,000 to someone that they did not consent to owing. And that's kind of a tricky conversation because those folks will have to report the individuals who have taken credit out in their name criminally in order for that to really be addressed. And, you know, no one wants to have to report their loved one in order to like avoid accountability for a debt that they did not incur. So all of those are things that any of the credit providing or credit support providing agencies can work with people on. So a little bit about financial technology. So what are the benefits of financial technology? There's lots and lots and lots of them out there. There's a couple that I've listed here. So Digit and Acorns and Twine. Capital also does this. They all provide a like savings service and also a financial picture service. Mint.com can also provide a financial picture of spending. I would say though, Mint has a lot of features, and sometimes that can be really overwhelming for folks, especially if they're not like super technology literate. It's a great service, but TrueLink Financial, I put this up here. So TrueLink provides a bank account that essentially the person, if somebody is like struggling with active substance use disorder, TrueLink provides an account where if the person tries to make a purchase or a withdrawal from the bank account over a certain threshold, there's basically like a buddy sort of like accountability system that somebody else will have to like, I don't want to say sign off on it, but basically like someone else will be notified this person is trying to withdraw over $500 or whatever. And so some people have found that to be helpful in financial management after a substance use disorder, but that's also, you have to be really, you know, careful with that the person that they're setting as their backup person is trustworthy. So the benefits of financial technology is that, you know, folks can, if they have a budget and they're trying to zero it out, financial tech can help them do that. It's a way to put away, I know with Acorns, like there are two different options. You can either have them take out a lump sum every week or every 2 weeks or every month, and you can have them round up every purchase to the nearest dollar and then put that change into the app. And one of the benefits of that is that there's delayed withdrawal to get that money back. So it's not like a savings account where if you transfer it to your bank account, it transfer almost instantly, right? If they're in the same financial institution. With these apps, there's a little bit of delayed withdrawal, which can be helpful for folks who have like some impulse control stuff going on, because they're not going to get the money right away. It also can help build savings. It's also a great way to teach them tech skills. The drawbacks are that, starting out, folks may not have the technology skills to be able to operate the apps. There's some fear and mistrust of the financial system, which is totally fair and valid. There have been lots of, unjust banking and finance practices that have disproportionately targeted the folks that we're talking about. Also, sometimes just building assets and saving and having the ability to save just seems impossible for folks. And there's a huge potential for scams. And so we really want to offer folks the vetted, safe apps before they, go to bankmymoney.com and put their money in there and then it's gone forever or whatever. So yes, technology. So when we're talking about budgeting and financial management, where do we start with that? And I would say that with these two populations, going back to what we talked about earlier with the recovery model, we have to start from a place of hope. We have to ask people, what are your dreams? I remember a long time ago, someone asked me, what's your BHAG? And I was like, well, I don't know what that is. But then they said, BHAG is a big, hairy, audacious goal. What is the really, really big thing that you haven't dared to dream about before? And if we start there, and then we sort of talk people through the process, because what we get into with this financial management piece is going to be really hard. When we're moving through debts, when we're talking about, all the people that you owe, that you haven't paid in a long time, and calling debt collection companies is not always fun. They're not always super nice to folks. It can be very overwhelming. In order to even start that financial process, we have to start in a really good place with a dream. Then we're going to go into the hard stuff of identifying, what's owed. Then we're going to go to the process of really reflecting on the debts, responding to the things that we haven't looked at in a long time, and working through those. Then we're going to determine an order of precedence for that. And then really I think for a long time when people are looking at their debts, when they're trying to restructure their spending and all of that, they're kind of why even have a job if I have all this stuff and I'm going to end up with $1 at the end of paying all of it. And that is a fair and valid concern, but that it's just something that we have to walk through. And so it's great for them to have all of you to walk through that with. Okay, employment. So employment is often a condition of release for returning citizens. MIT has a living wage calculator on their website. I would absolutely recommend using that living wage calculator. You can go in there and specify what kind of field of employment that somebody is interested in and find out what the market trends are in terms of payment in that field. And then it can also, kind of help figure out for the average housing prices, for the average cost of living in the place that you're at, what kind of paycheck do you need in order to really afford those sorts of things. And so I go to that MIT living wage calculator so often. So garnishments, and I mentioned this earlier, but so the 25, 60, 65 rule. The garnishment process is that if you have just a normal debt to a third party and there's a judgment, they can garnish. The judgment piece is really important. It has to have been gone through the legal process and been judged. They can garnish up to 25% of your wages or 30 times the federal minimum wage to garnish for those debts. It goes up to 50% if it's government debt with a spouse or dependent. And so when we talk about government debt, we're talking about child support, restitution, back taxes. If you have a spouse or a dependent that is relying on you, they can garnish 50%. If you don't have a spouse or a dependent that's relying on you directly, so for example, if you have a child, but that child is living full-time with someone else, they would not be considered dependent on your income. They can garnish up to 60% of your wages. And then if those debts are overdue 12 weeks, they can garnish an additional 5% for that. And so sometimes we're talking about folks that are having their wages garnished 65%. I used to work with folks and sometimes they would come home with a $20 paycheck after they worked 2 weeks. And it's because, they were being garnished 65%. And then they were having to turn around and that garnishment just applies to the past debt. But then they were also having current child support being taken out. And then they were also having current restitution being taken out. And so they were coming home with a $20 paycheck. How do I live on this? And that is a very fair and valid question that a lot of folks struggle with. The vast majority of the time, folks in these populations that we're working with, they don't have resumes. And so it's going to be a little bit of walking through employment history, helping people and coaching them through what their response is going to be to gaps in their employment history. And there is a website called Honest Jobs, which specifically only allows employers to post jobs if they are second chance employers. And there are lots of different second chance employment opportunities in the community. I know Goodwill works some on second chance employment with their folks that they serve. And so when we are talking about the folks that are specifically returning citizens, but also folks with substance use disorder, we really are going to need to lean in a little bit on second chance employers or employers that are open and available to hiring folks that maybe don't have the most consistent job history. And then I also put this on here in terms of employment because I am always advocating to ban the box in Kentucky, the box on employment applications that asks about prior convictions. Because I think there's so often that is limiting of folks being able to obtain meaningful employment that will help them, pay the bills that they have. And so that's not necessarily something for our folks that we are serving to do, but that's more for all of us. It's when we care about this population, we want to see the best for them, advocating wherever possible to make things easier for them always. Okay, so we're gonna do a little 5-minute break. Oh, it worked. So I put the little timer up here. Please come back in 5 minutes and then we will finish up all the other stuff that we have. Thanks, everybody. All right, and we're back. This is my adorable cat, Goth Brooks here. The one time he's sleeping in his whole life. So, when we are working with folks in terms of their financial life, what are we looking for? We're looking for empowerment, folks feeling like they have an opportunity to decide what's going to happen to them and for them. Engagement. We want our folks to be excited to come and see us. Even if we're talking about hard stuff, just knowing that somebody else is invested, which is the next one, investment. We don't want to be working with folks that are less invested in their situation than we are, and so with this one, I think there's just an opportunity for continuous revisiting with folks. And then we want our folks to be really excited about the work that we're doing. So in order to do that, we're constantly celebrating their successes. Even the small wins are big wins, And then finally, executive functioning is critical when we're talking especially about like financial management skills, because those are not, a lot of times when we talk about money, we're really challenging the bottom part, the guard dog part of the brain, because money is not an easy topic to discuss. Okay, so there's, these common financial tools that we talk about, and then there's the brain science behind coaching. And we are trying to make the link between them for folks in these two populations. So, there are things that we talk about in the level 1 class of this certification, like powerful questions, or a lot of organizations lean heavily on motivational interviewing. There's all these financial assessments that folks work with. So one that comes to mind is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's Financial Wellbeing Scale. And then goal setting worksheets are very, very common in terms of like financial planning. And so there are 3 sort of parts of executive functioning that folks have to have in order to complete any of those. And one is a working memory. So they have to be able to call up experiences, facts, figures, data, mental flexibility. So the ability to really, move from one topic to the next, to the next, to the next in a logical order when speaking with the person that they're working with. And then finally, that impulse control piece. Impulsivity is very highly linked to folks with substance use disorder. And so there's like one key that is needed to basically access all 3 of these parts. And that's self-regulation. But part of self-regulation is really feeling like you have the right and the ability to self-regulate and to decide what happens to you, which we know for folks that are formerly incarcerated, that has not always been the case for them. And so that is sort of like when we talk about coaching, that's sort of the part that is going to have to come first, right? Is helping people like reorient themselves to the fact that, like, you know, you're in charge, you're making the decisions, you're driving the bus, but you have to let other people on the bus if you want them to help you. And so in order to bridge the gap between these financial tools and the brain science that we know about executive functioning, we really are going to walk through the coaching process with them. And so I have like a little bit of a case study here. And I call this case study the cycler. So this is someone that I worked with as a alcohol and drug counselor. And essentially, like, you know, she had just been released from prison. She had 4 young children, 2 of which she had while she was incarcerated, and she had not seen them yet since the day that she gave birth. And so she was like working really hard and really motivated and excited to like start the process of like trying to get her children back. In order to do that, she had to become employed. And she had to like start making her back child support payments. So she went out like one day, she just hit the pavement, started going like job to job of places that she knew that folks had been able to get employment before. And she got a job at a place that was 16 miles away from the recovery center where she was living. The catch is there was a bus that went from the recovery center to the job and back. The catch is she had to be at work before the bus started running. So she came in, she was very excited. She had a job. She was really like motivated, ready to go. And I was like, well, how are you going to get there? And she's like, well, I can't afford, you know, an Uber. So my friend has a bike. They're going to like let me have the bike and I'm going to bike myself to work and back home. Well, back home wasn't as much of an issue because she could take the bus. Once she was able to get a bus pass, she could take the bus back and just put the bike on the bus. But getting there was the real problem. And I was like, well, you know, do you have any experience like with bicycling? And she was like, no, but it'll be okay. Like it's gonna happen. Got it. And so I was like, well, you know, 16 miles is a lot of miles to bike, but you know, if you are set on this and this is what you want to do, like, great, you know, however I can help, let me know. And so the next day she gets up super, super early. She gets on the bike, she leaves, and I would say probably around noon, she comes back and she is, I mean, lobster sunburnt, like so sunburnt. And she just looks like she's getting ready to fall over. And so I asked her, you know, so what happened? Tell me what's going on. And she was like, well, you know, I started bicycling there. I got really tired. Then I got lost. And by the time I made it to the workplace, I was like an hour and a half late. And so, of course, they wouldn't let her start the job and told her, you know, that she was dismissed. And then she did not yet have a bus pass. And so she started to try to bicycle back, and was not able to make that journey because she was so tired and so worn out from this whole experience that she had to call a friend and like pay a friend $5 to like drive her back to the place. And so there's a lot, right, going on there. But I guess my questions for all of you, like hearing that experience, what were the strengths that she came in with? Yes, she is very motivated. She is pumped. She had a goal, absolutely. Any other strengths that folks can think of? Determined. Yes, definitely. Problem solving, so key. Yes. Resilience, problem solving again. Yeah, so she had like all these things going for her, right? And like she had a problem, she found a solution. So I guess when we're talking about this, my other question then is, where was she like having some executive dysfunction? What were some of the things that she didn't consider that she should have? Yeah, so time management, time to reach the job. Unrealistic, absolutely. Physical ability, definitely. Yeah, so she had all of these really, really great strengths in her situation, but when it was translated to the realistic expectations that she should have had about time, about her physical ability, about transportation, it did not carry over. So my question to all of you then is, in thinking about this specific situation, you know, what do we do? How do we keep that dream alive in folks, the strengths, all the stuff that she had going well for her? How do we work within all of that to address these unrealistic expectations? So I think that the first thing that I would say here is that, you know, we have to let people have the opportunity to make mistakes or to fail. In this instance, like, you know, she came back, she's like, this job and like I'm sunburnt and I'm tired and I'm not going to be able to get a different job and I just lost this one. And but like the reality is you went out there and you did that thing, right? Like it's going to take a day or two to probably recover from that, and it's going to take a little while to maybe find a different job. The reality is it took her maybe like a whole 2 hours a couple days later to find a new job that was within walking distance. But the reality is, you know, she had the planning, she had the problem solving, she was doing all of the executive functioning with the exception of like the what's reasonable or realistic. And so just giving people the opportunity to try and fail things while also being able to come back and say, like, this is what worked, this is what didn't work, and helping to highlight and celebrate the things that they did well is only going to like reinforce this whole executive function piece. And so that's a lot of what coaching is about. is really, you know, asking folks, what do you want to do? How are you going to do that? Okay, and then if something happens and that doesn't happen, or you don't achieve what you're looking for, then like, where do we go back to start again? And so I love that example a lot because, you know, I do think that there's real bold resilience in folks that are returning citizens and folks that are recovering from substance use disorder. There's a lot of like strength to being in that space and to like all the experiences that folks have had that they should have never had to have had, you know, but like they went through that, they faced that, they came out on the other side, and that in and of itself is a strength. And so we want to be really like focusing on that and then just sort of like implementing seeds of wisdom in the places. Again, you know, we talked about this earlier, but with impulse control, like clearly, you know, she had a little bit of like impulse control issue that was kind of stopping her from being very realistic. And so when we talk about the work that we're doing with folks, especially in the financial space, we have to know that like, if someone says that their dream is to, I don't know, own a yacht and they have negative $12 in their bank account, like that's a great dream to have and we want to work on that. But like, how do we implement these like shorter term action steps in there to really set you up for success for that long-term goal? So I have a couple final thoughts. We're ending kind of early today. Ooh, giving you back 30 minutes. So a couple of just like final thoughts that I have about working with substance use disorder clients or folks that are returning citizens is that, you know, we just want to revisit like constantly. This is where you were when we started. This is where you were 2 weeks ago. This is where you were yesterday, to really help folks inspire that hope and continue to feel that even if there are setbacks, which there will be, you know, we are planning for those setbacks at the very, very beginning of the financial management. Like, we know that's going to happen and we're being realistic about that. But we are also just constantly revisiting how things are getting handled and managed and moved forward. And like, if there's something that we can't handle right now, maybe we table that for later. You know, maybe there's a debt that someone has to pay that they just, you know, they don't have the means to do that at the moment. Maybe someone has a debt in partnership with someone else, and that is what's making it difficult to pay. We're going to put that on the shelf for later, and we're going to focus on something else until we're ready to get there. I would also just recommend with these two populations, plan for shorter, more frequent sessions. So if you can keep your sessions to 30 minutes or less, but you can meet more frequently, that's just going to help folks retain information as they're sort of rebuilding their working memory. And it's also going to give them an opportunity to decompress less information, which will help to avoid that guard dog brain taking over. I said this probably 100 times today. I'm going to say it again. I'll probably say it multiple times. Here, I'll even add some confetti. Celebrate everything, even the very, very smallest things. We're celebrating them. We're giving people hope. We're working from a place of hope. It also, like, realistically, it may take time to get it right. It may take time for you to get it right with them. Folks, you know, maybe they're not intentionally hiding debts, right? But maybe there's just debt out there they didn't even know they had. Or maybe, you know, I don't know, things happen where people have experiences that they didn't know they were going through. And so it's a lot of readjustment. But we are in it for the long haul, and we just need to let them know, like, we're here, we're doing the thing, and we're gonna get it right at some point. And let's celebrate that again. Whew. No one should give me a confetti button. I'll just use it all the time. The other thing I would say is take notes and share them. So while you're in sessions with folks, be writing down all of the things that have been talked about. But when you get to the end, review with them. Okay, this is what I understood from our session. And that gives them the opportunity to sort of say, oh, well, I thought that we talked about this differently, or I thought, you know, we said that you were going to do X and I was going to do Y. And that gives them an opportunity for more choice and more voice in what is happening. And then also take very small steps, going back earlier to what we said about, you know, folks want like a quick solution. They want something that is going to fix it now. And that is not what financial management and financial empowerment really is. There is a long, long haul process, but we want to take just the tiniest little steps. And again, when we take those small steps, we're celebrating it. And then I also think, you know, just like I sort of did at the beginning of this presentation, where I was like, how much do you know about this on a scale of 1 to 5? Just continuous feedback from you and the person that you're serving. How did you feel about today's session on a scale of 1 to 5? Well, I felt a 3. Maybe they felt a 4, you know, or maybe I felt a 4 and they felt a 1. But we just want to constantly be getting that continuous feedback because it's only going to help them get better, you know? And then finally, I would say, get creative. This is like somewhat related, but not really, but just an example of this is like, I was working with a person who had newly entered recovery, but was in a domestic violence situation where their partner was basically trying to just constantly, you know, derail them from their progress. And so one of the things that she was doing, she was in school and her partner would like throw away her homework and ruin her textbooks. And so we started the process while she was trying to leave that situation and get her own housing. We started the process of like hiding her homework in a cereal box, you know, because like they would never look in the cereal box for the homework, right? And that is just a creative solution in the temporary until there's a more permanent process. And so always with this, we're going to have to get creative. There's no way around. If the solutions were easy and they were out there, folks wouldn't need us, right? And so always just be thinking about in the back of your mind, well, what if this worked? Or what if we could do this and that would help the situation? Because that is really going to help your folks also get creative about their situations. And then this is my buddy Simon. So I think Joey has a survey. Is that right, Joey?
Yes.
Okay.
So both the post survey and a copy of today's presentation will be emailed out later today.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining me today. I'm gonna give another little confetti to that. Thanks for hanging out with me and being awesome participants. If you ever have questions, if you ever need anything, please let me know. And thank you so much for your time today.
And then I'm also going to be hanging around a little bit if you have certification questions as a whole.
Hi, Joey. This is Jennifer Massey. I think this is my 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 4th or 5th level 2. I forget what the requirement is.
Well, it's 3 to complete it and also having completed level 1 as well.
Okay, I've done that too.
Okay. So once I put in the attendance for today,
Okay.
I will double check everything and you may be getting your level 2 certificate.
Okay, that'd be great. I mean, I may be wrong, but I think I'm right.
Let's make it forward. Well, And the only reason why is, no, that's not making.
You'll just email the certificates from this class.
Well, no, there are no certificate, excuse me, specifically for attending this class. That is only if you complete level 2. If you need if you need confirmation that you attended today's session, just email me and I will send you the document that we use for that.
Looks like it's just us now, Joey.
And unless you have any certification questions, you are free to leave.
Okay. See you later.
See ya.